letter from Secretary of State John Kerry. The Secretary is just off yet another overseas trip, dealing with issues that we'll discuss here today. And Mr. Secretary, your dedication is clear to all. Secretary Kerry comes to present his department's budget request, the many serious challenges we as a nation and the department in particular faces worldwide. These challenges seem to grow by the day. Iran and North Korea are pursuing nuclear weapons. Regarding Iran, all of us want to see, Mr. Secretary, all of us want to see you get a meaningful, lasting agreement. But the committee, as you know, has real concerns about the direction of these talks. I'm hearing less about dismantlement and more about the permanence of Iran's nuclear program. That's particularly disturbing when you consider that international inspectors report that Iran has still not revealed its past bomb work. This should be treated as a fundamental test of the Ayatollah's intention to uphold any agreement. Iran is failing that test. Also, it is still illicitly procuring nuclear technology. Recently, Iran was caught testing a new generation of supersonic centrifuges. To be frank, as this committee reads about us being on the brink of a historic agreement, you have a challenge in terms of congressional buy-in. Meanwhile, Iran and its proxies are wreaking havoc throughout the region.
Briefly on Iran, I've said many times that my preference is a negotiated solution to the Iranian nuclear crisis. However, we're hearing troubling reports on the scale and duration of the program that Iran may be allowed as part of a deal. As you've said many times, Mr. Secretary, no deal is better than a bad deal. And so we must ensure that Iran has no pathway to a nuclear weapon and that any deal we sign is a good deal.
And I mentioned my concern about the direction of the Iran talks. And of course, we understand we're still negotiating in this. And I understand you've cautioned not to judge a deal we haven't yet seen. But it's important that the administration know the committee's concerns as you negotiate. And one thing we do know is that Iran has continued to stonewall international inspectors concerning its past bomb work. And as you've acknowledged, this is a critical part of these negotiations. And it's a fundamental test of Iran's commitment. But the concern I have at the moment is what the Secretary General says. And he indicates that he is concerned about signs of military-related activities, including Iran designing a nuclear payload for a missile, inspectors in Iran, the IAEA inspectors have amassed over 1,000 pages which showed research, development, and testing activities on technologies needed to develop a nuclear weapon. And of the 12 sets of questions that the IAEA has been seeking since 2011, Iran answered part of one of those. And so I'd like to ask you for a response on the concerns on the part of the IAEA and us on the committee.
Well, they're legitimate, and the questions have to be answered. And they will be unless, if they want to have an agreement.
Yeah, we had 350 members write you expressing deep concern about this lack of cooperation. And of course, from our standpoint, unless we have a full understanding of Iran's program, we're not going to be able to judge a year's breakout time with certainty. That's the conundrum we face here. And they're withholding that information. And without going into detail again, but as you know, I have concerns about the fact they were caught with that supersonic centrifuge, testing that, and the whole procurement
Let me just say on that centrifuge, yes. When you say supersonic, they have some advanced centrifuges that do more than the centrifuge they have today. We're well aware of that. We've been tracking all of that, and really there was a misunderstanding of the language in the interim agreement, which did allow current testing. There was a question about whether that had been current. We raised it, and immediately, within 24 hours, it ceased, There was no question, and there's been no further effort on that. In fact, the IAEA has signed off that Iran has complied with every single component of the interim agreement.
And
we raise these questions regarding the IAEA, Mr. Chairman, and as I said, they're going to have to be answered. So that's part of the discussion right now.
There's a piece today in the New York Times. Inspectors say Iran is evading questions as nuclear talks enter a crucial stage. Per my conversations with the IAEA, I know those concerns.
You testified in the Senate yesterday that, quote, the policy is Iran will not get a nuclear weapon, end quote. However, last month, your deputy, Tony Blinken, testified that the deal being negotiated is meant only to constrain Iran's breakout capabilities. So which one is it, constraining or eliminating? And if the deal is to truly prevent Iran from ever acquiring a nuclear weapon, then why are we allowing Iran to enrich, to keep some of their stockpiles and centrifuges? Your agreement is based on the assumption that we can verify if Iran cheats, but the Defense Science Board and former CIA Director General Hayden have stated that our capability to detect Iran's undeclared or covert nuclear sites is either inadequate or does not exist. So can we catch when Iran cheats? And when they do cheat, not if, but when, what consequences will Iran suffer? And reports surfaced yesterday, as the chairman said, of an undeclared Iranian enrichment site. What information can you share about this new site? And will this development how will this development impact the negotiation?
1 year breakout is time it takes to get enough fissile material for one nuclear weapon, which they haven't yet designed or been able to test or put on a warhead or explode or anything. So that's many more years it takes to get there. We don't lose one option that we have today, not one option, during that period of time. Slap back on the sanctions, make them worse than they are today. Or, of course, if you had to, you always have a military option. So we don't take away any option. We actually expand the period of time during which we can determine what's going on now.
In your earlier testimony, you said that Iran is not permitted to have a nuclear weapon ever because they're members of the NPT, unlike North Korea. North Korea was a member of the NPT. They withdrew in 2003, and I'd hope you'd clarify for the record that North Korea is not entitled to have a nuclear weapon, and that Iran does not become permitted to have a nuclear weapon should they at some future time decide to withdraw from the NPT. I hope that you would furnish for the record a statement that our position is once you're in the NPT, you cannot get out. Otherwise, every country is just one letter away from being permitted to develop nuclear weapons. You've talked about 1 year to break out. What I'm concerned about is how long to sneak out. The MEK sometimes gives us accurate information. They're the ones that told the world about the Iranian nuclear program. They now say that there's a secret facility at Lavanzan 3. One approach is that what I'd like to know is, are you willing to accept an agreement in which the IAEA does not have the right to go anywhere on short notice to look at undeclared or potentially undeclared or credibly believed to be undeclared nuclear sites? Or are we going to settle for the cat and mouse game in which you can tell us it's a year to break out and the Iranians have undisclosed facilities and we can't even check them out? I'd ask that you be allowed to answer that for the...
Do we have time left?
I hope you have time for that one last question.
We'll do the last question, but we'll need to keep moving. We only have 5 minutes for each member, and we want to get as many as possible. So go ahead with the last question.
Well, let me just say, clearly, Iran does not have a right to step out of the NPT and then go. And if they began to do that, we will hopefully, and this is part of what is being negotiated, have the ability to know immediately if there's any movement in that direction. And then we have all our options, as I said, that are available to us. Going a step further, On this secret facility, we're well aware of the accusation or the allegations regarding that facility. It will obviously have to be, any questions would have to be answered to have any kind of an agreement, and I think people should rest assured that will take place. And on the IAEA, we are negotiating for the appropriate standards and process that the IAEA needs in order to be able to answer appropriate questions. That's a critical part of compliance with any NPT country, and there is a process, as you know, that is required in order to achieve that. So that's obviously part of the negotiation.
I think that today we should be set the priority, which is who is our primary enemy, who is the primary threat to the well-being and security of our people. And I think that we have to come to the realization that it's radical Islam is the primary threat to our safety. And I know our president has a little bit of difficulty saying those words together about radical Islamic terrorism, but I have no problem saying it. And that is the primary enemy for the security of our people. And that includes, by the way, the mullah regime in Iran. Just right off the bat, when you mentioned that the mullahs had to actually went ahead and they have actually moved forward and accomplished the agreements that they had pledged to do about nuclear weapons. Did the mullah regime tell us about the existence of this new nuclear facility that our friends in the MEK, who were permitting to sit out in the middle of the desert vulnerably, did we know about that nuclear facility?
Well, you're saying it's a nuclear facility. That is yet to be determined, but we know about the facility, yes.
So the mullahs, had the mullahs disclosed that facility to us?
Well, it has not been revealed yet as a nuclear facility, which is on a list of facilities we have, and I'm not going to go into greater detail, but these things are obviously going to have to be resolved as we go forward.